Welcome back to another episode of ACR On Air, the official podcast of the American College of Rheumatology. I'm your host, Dr. John Hausman. Today's episode is all about the leap from the structured world of rheumatology fellowship into the dynamic, often mysterious realm of private practice. My guest is Dr. Tom Barry, a private practice rheumatologist who shares his real-world journey navigating that transition, from the practical differences between academic and private settings to the business learning curve, patient care dynamics, and how he stays clinically sharp. This episode offers a grounded, insightful look at what awaits fellows as they step into independent practice. Dr. Thomas Barry received his medical degree from the University of New England College of Osteopathic Medicine and completed his residency at Advocate Lutheran General Hospital, where he was also chief resident. Dr. Barry completed his rheumatology fellowship at the University of Illinois in Chicago, and he works in private practice at Arnold Arthritis and Rheumatology in Skokie, Illinois. Enjoy. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah, so I'm really interested in your arrival at a private practice. Can you walk us through how you got to private practice from fellowship? I realize that's actually what most fellows do out of fellowship, yet at least I had almost no knowledge of what private practice was all about. I didn't learn about it during my fellowship. So I just want to hear a little bit about how you ended up where you are.
Well, quite honestly, I had limited knowledge looking into it as well. My experience in medicine, I think which is true of many residents across specialties, is that I had done a residency at a large hospital, a large institution that had some access to private practice, but overall limited. I knew what it was, but didn't know the ins and outs of it. And then I did my fellowship at an academic center, as most people do. And then when I started to job hunt, because the fellowship unfortunately had to end at one point, right? I happened across an advertisement looking for a person to come on to a private practice, and that was really my introduction and how I got into this world. And it's been a little bit of a journey ever since.
Interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about like your particular private practice and how it works?
Sure. So I'm at Arnold Arthritis and Rheumatology. This is in Skokie, Illinois, so just north of Chicago. And we've got a private practice here. It's myself and another rheumatologist. She is the founder and the senior rheumatologist there. And our practice here was really designed around really the patient-physician interaction here. So really this whole practice, the way she came up with it was to emphasize everything that was about that patient-physician relationship and to make sure that everything within the practice was centered around that. So from when the patient checks in to what our MAs do, to what our staff do, is trying to optimize that amount of time that we get together. She actually gave a presentation at ACR, 2 or 3 years ago at this point, probably a little bit longer, just about how she runs and manages her practices as a private practice.
Super cool. And what attracted you to that particular private practice? What was it about that advertisement that you saw that sort of piqued your interest?
So, I actually saw the lecture at ACR. This was it must have been a COVID lecture because I remember watching it virtually. And she talked about practice efficiency and management. And oh man, that just sounded so fantastic to me. This was maybe my first year of fellowship. I wasn't even thinking about jobs yet, but that piqued my interest. And then, just being able to seamlessly gather information and data, have it all laid in front of me, and then be able to work with my patient, explain it all, give that educational component to the patient, that really it just sold me. We have a heavy ultrasound presence at our practice, so we do a lot of that, and it has just helped so much in terms of my practice management.
Great. Did you have training U.S. Sonar or?
No training at U.S. Sonar, or at least formal training. I've done a lot of courses on ultrasound to begin with, but no of the formal designations or certificates.
Got it. And in entering private practice, tell me about your first experiences. Like, how did it differ from the way that rheumatology is practiced in academia? and the way that you practice it during fellowship?
So I suppose two different answers to that question. First is the transition from being a fellow to not being a fellow. All of a sudden, you don't have to
That's
staff anymore, right? So that is a bit of a transition. So being just the only person there in the room, that was an easy one. My fellowship trained me pretty darn well. I was ready for that transition.
great.
But then there's just a whole bunch of things that you see in private practice that are just different. You're seeing a lot earlier cases for
Mm.
things, something as simple as rheumatoid arthritis. Well, let me rephrase. Rheumatoid arthritis is not always simple, but one of our more common conditions, like rheumatoid arthritis, that there you're seeing maybe not 6 months out, maybe it's as soon as a couple of weeks, a couple of swollen joints,
Wow.
and they can get in to see me. So the types of cases changed, and the patient population changed as well. My training was at a more urban center, and this is a more suburban one, so that just changes the nature of the patients you would get. And then you get a lot more control over your practice. If there's something you don't like and you want to change it, it can happen pretty quickly. So I can change around my EMR to things that I like or things that I'm interested in. I can have my staff help me out and give the patient a BAS diet form for my spondy cases, or help me out in other ways.
Hmm. And do you think that fellows that are thinking about going into private practice should have any specific training, or any additional information that they should, or anything else that they should be doing during fellowship to prepare them for private practice? Because I feel like the fact that most, as you mentioned, most fellowships are in academic medical centers, they sort of train us to do that, right? To continue doing that. Is there any specific training that should be done in fellowships to sort of optimize, fellows to start a private practice?
And that's a tough one, because I think what the fellowships are supposed to do, and I think what they do very well, is they should train you to be a rheumatologist. They should train you how to think about the conditions, how to think about the diseases, and how to use your medications appropriately. And that should really be what they focus on. If there's time for that sort of business of rheumatology to understand the various aspects and how it affects you, that's appropriate. But I think really, truly overall, their number one goal should be to train rheumatologists appropriately in the medicine.
When you were making that decision about jobs, did you talk to anybody about sort of various different job opportunities, or did you have any mentors that may have helped you make that decision to
Oh my gosh, I
join a
talked to so
private
many people.
practice?
Yeah, ears off, right? Because I had some great mentors at my fellowship program, so I always took their opinions.
Right.
And I think they told me the things that some of them had experience with private practice. They told me the things they liked, and they told me the things they didn't like, and things to be aware of. And that was very helpful for me. Things to watch out for, just to make sure that the culture fits with you and the things that you want to do within rheumatology.
Hmm. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you started doing a private practice? You mentioned a lot of good things, the ability to customize your schedule, your EMR, get your MAs to help you out. Was there anything surprising or challenging about starting in private practice?
My knowledge of insurance and how it works,
Hmm.
how PBMs work, how we get paid with Medicare, I was all just brand new to this. Quite honestly, I'm still trying to understand some of the aspects of insurance. It is not easy. But how contracts work with an insurance company, all of those sorts of things were
Hmm.
just brand new to me and didn't have enough experience with it previously.
Yeah. How much involvement do you have within the business aspect of your practice? That business of rheumatology is something that, we never learn. I'm wondering if that's a requirement, or is that something that you sort of learn as you go within your practice?
I'd say learn as you go. I'm still really getting my feet wet with this, and it's not something that comes easily, and there's no single manual that will tell you how to do it.
You can't check it out of the library.
It wasn't in any of the gigantic rheumatology textbooks we have, right?
You can't do it up to date. How do you how to run a
Yeah.
private practice in rheumatology?
Exactly, exactly.
Very good. And did you explore academia, or were there things about, academia or other, pharmaceutical companies, anything else that you explored that you were thinking about that you decided, against, or that weren't as exciting for you as the private practice route?
One of the things that I considered was a VA position, because my
Mm.
fellowship had a VA component to it, and I just really loved it at the VA. So I had considered that, but there wasn't a physician available at the time, so I just kept looking around.
Very good. One of the concerns that, I've heard a lot of fellows have is that, within academia, there's a lot of people to ask questions and you're always learning. You have fellows that ask you questions and often, they know much more than we do about various different aspects of rheumatology. And within the private practice, there's a big concern about how do you continue learning? What do you do with challenging cases? Who do you talk to about these things? What has your experience been?
I still have other consultants, other people that I lean on. It's just in a different way. So when I was in fellowship in an academic institution, we shared an office with nephrology. So if I had a question about lupus nephritis management, there was often a nephrologist sitting next to me. That's pretty easy. I could, chat her up or my attending. Here, it's the same thing. It's just different. If I've got a question here, I just ring up the other consultant that I need to speak with. One of the benefits of private practice is my staff can help me out. They can hand out my cell phone number, and it's easy enough to speak with people. So that makes it simple. And then, I still have the people in rheumatology that I trust, that I know, that if I ever have a question or something else arises, they're still out there. I can reach out to them.
Yeah. And another thing that's sort of characteristic of academia is that we have all these conferences, right? Like,
Mhm.
we have grand rounds and pathology conferences and journal clubs. And that sort of the aim is to sort of train everybody as you go along. How does that work in private practice? And do you make sure that you continue to learn and latest advancements, new medications within rheumatology, which seems to be moving at an ever more rapid pace.
Isn't it exciting? Yes. So basically the same as everyone else. I read the journals. That's what my Friday is. It's journal
Mm,
day. And then I talk with my friends that are interested. It's about finding, I don't know if it's about having a set conference time, but it's about finding people that are like minded and interested. So you just got
hmm
to find your group and speak with them. I still communicate with a bunch of my co fellows, and, we send each other journal articles back and forth. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it's the digital age. So there's 1,001 applications, online journal clubs. I love it all. MedNet is my new favorite that I just got turned on to,
Yeah,
which is a plug for MedNet.
yeah. Seriously,
Yeah.
it's a great one. We should get them on the show to talk about their project. It's quite interesting. Tell me a little bit about sort of the reimbursement. For an academic medical centers, we pretty much get a salary. Maybe we get some bonuses if we have RVUs above a certain threshold. But how does it work in private practice? Do you just what is it? You eat what you kill?
There are certainly private practices like that, and it'll vary from practice to practice and how it's set up. So I've got friends that work in a practice like that, but it also allows them to other opportunities for things outside of medicine. But it really goes back to the contract, what you negotiated, and how you want to set
Hmm,
that up. Some people are view based, some people are pure salary. It depends.
got it. Yeah, and there's a lot of financial challenges that have been happening over the last few years. I know, in my hospital, they're trying to cut costs and, you know, joining hospitals to make even sort of bigger healthcare organizations. I imagine the same challenges are being faced by, smaller practices like your own. Uh, you know, there's all these healthcare systems that are buying different private practices. I wonder if your office has experienced any financial challenges over the last few years, and if you could talk a little bit about how you're trying to overcome that.
So we all have experienced financial challenges, right? I actually just got back from the ACR event at Capitol Hill, which is another
Mm.
plug for ACR event on Capitol Hill. It is
Yes,
fantastic.
yes,
You should go. You should
advocacy
go.
day. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
good one.
So the issues with Medicare reimbursement, with funding of Medicaid and Medicare to begin with, are challenges we're all going to face, every single one of us. So if you're reading the news, if you're paying attention here to what's been happening in that regard, I would highly encourage you to reach out to your representatives, because this is not something that's unique to private practice. It's just going to be omnipresent.
Yeah, no, it's true. Can you talk a little bit about what your day looks like? like how many patients you see and whether, do you get to take any of your work home, or are you pretty much able to finish your notes and get on with the rest of your life when when you get home?
So I'm averaging somewhere between 18 to 20 something patients a day, somewhere in there. And then I try to get as much done at home or in the office as possible, just because that's the way I like to set things up. But I've got a family and I try to get home by 6 so I can, be with them. But it's not infrequent for me to have to turn on the computer afterwards and, just finish up notes and documentation, everything else.
Yeah.
I do finish all of my notes the day that they are done. So the day I see a patient, that note is done. I'm strict
Amazing.
on that one.
Amazing. And do you get any help with your notes? Do you have a scribe or any of these AI scribes or anybody else that helps you with that?
I don't have a scribe. I've thought about it in the past, but this AI really sounds intriguing. So I do have friends that are using a couple of these, and they tell me it's the next greatest thing. I haven't
Yeah.
found one that can integrate well with our EMR, but I am actively looking because I that sounds just so cool. And if it's true that it can take time off your notes and that allows you more time with patient, then I'm interested.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They have their pros and cons. At least the some of the products that I've used are really good at capturing the HPI, so it
Hmm.
does an excellent job. But for the assessment and plan, there's even if you say it like, oh, I think your RA is active, we should increase your methotrexate dose. It just doesn't capture it, and it's hard. Like when you read it, like what is it that the physician thinks is going on with this patient? So, I think it's a work in progress, but, hopefully, I expect these things to just get better over time.
It'd be really great if we had something that could really eliminate the amount of documentation we have to do, because that is just it's a huge burden for us.
Can you talk a little bit about sort of you mentioned the contract, that first contract. Did you get any help in negotiating that contract? Did you hire a lawyer, or how did that go?
I had no idea what I was doing with my first contract, so I hired a lawyer. Um,
Okay. Was that
so
helpful?
very helpful. I think every single residency program probably has a person that knows a lawyer that specializes in this type of work.
Yeah.
So I worked with a lawyer. They explained the ins and outs of it to me because just as medical jargon, I think is just so impossible. Legal jargon might be even worse.
Yeah.
So that was a big, big, big help for me.
Great. I wonder if you could go back to when you were in fellowship, what advice would you give yourself, or what advice would you give others where, who are contemplating pursuing a career in private practice?
I suppose see as many patients as possible, right? Because even things that we consider routine, they're not. And then you always in fellowship have that one patient that you've seen, and it's a rare condition, and you might only see it once, and then someday you're going to be in the office and you're going to want to call back on that information. So see as many
Yeah.
patients as you can.
Yeah.
Learn as
I
much as you
wonder,
can.
yeah, I wonder, you sort of hinted at it a little bit about that the types of patients that you see in your practice, differ from the ones that we typically see in academia. I wonder, how you think about managing complex patients with lupus nephritis, vasculitis, pulmonary hemorrhage. Like, do those patients get to you, or do they stick to an academic medical center? And if you do see them, do you continue to take care of them, or do you refer them elsewhere?
It depends on the complexity and the nature of it. If you have a patient that's going to require 4 or 5 subspecialists communicating together at the same time, then sometimes if I'm in the private practice here, I might just be in the way because I'm not as easy to communicate, say, with a chat feature that might be on everyone's EMR. And if that's the case, yeah, then they probably belong downtown. Or if they have therapies downtown that I can't offer. I'm sorry, by downtown, I mean an academic center. But if it's just a function of I need to be able to communicate, if it's something I can handle, then I'm going to handle it.
What advice would you tell, people that are currently in academia that may be thinking about joining a private practice because of, various changes that are happening in academia? Any advice for those people?
Oh gosh, this is a good question. I would say that The ability to control your schedule, that is a little bit more, but it's just a different type of workflow. So it's going to be, it's still rheumatology, but the way your day is going to be shaped and moved is just going to be a little bit different. You might be seeing a different type of patient overall.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about that. So like osteoarthritis or fibromyalgia, what are the most common types of conditions that you care for in patients?
I would still say it's our usual things. So I moved to an area that just simply has a larger range of psoriatic arthritis and
Hmm.
AS. So I'm just seeing a ton more of that than I ever did in fellowship.
Interesting.
PMR, based on my area, just a ton more, and GCA, of course. So it's just the type of medicine I've seen.
Hmm.
It's just shifted, that's all. There is, the osteoarthritis patient, there is the fibromyalgia patient, but I wouldn't say it's any more or less than what I saw in academia or
Got
in
it.
fellowship, forgive me.
Yeah. And how do you think the future looks like in private practice? I mean, from what I understand, a lot of these private practices are being bought up by venture capitalists or by other larger healthcare systems. How do you see it, like from your vantage point of view, with all of these regulatory changes, this financial concerns? Do you think private practice is something that will continue to flourish over time, or it stays numbered?
I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball. I would say that the way I can deliver healthcare to patients, I want to continue because I think I can do a good job here in this private practice setting. But I have the concerns that I think everyone else has about the way things are currently looking with things like reimbursement and with things like inflation. I realize it is a huge faux pas to talk about a graph on a podcast, but the American Medical Association does have this fantastic graph of inflation going up in terms of running a medical practice and compensation that physicians receive from something like Medicare. So it's, I'm going to go back to ACR Advocacy Day. We need to be reaching out.
Great. And one last question that I have, becoming a doctor, like the steps are pretty clear. Like you do your your medical school and residency and fellowship, and then you become an attending. And first you're an instructor, and then maybe you can get promoted to assistant and associate professor. And, the goal in theory is to become full professor. So there's like this, pathway that tells you the steps you need to do to progress and quote unquote advance your career. I wonder how you see that in private practice. How do you grow professionally when you are in private practice?
I would think about it as having a practice that's functioning, successful in the way that you want it to be successful. That if you're seeing patients in a timely fashion and you're helping them improve and get better and do all the things that you really set out to do when you wrote down that first medical school essay about how you want to help people, then I would say that's a successful practice.
Awesome. I really like that. Tom, this has been a really wonderful conversation. It's really opened my eyes to private practice. And, it'd be awesome if I could spend a day with you, just seeing how it works. It'd be very interesting. But thank you so much for your time. And thank you for taking time, out of your busy day to talk to us.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. You are welcome anytime.
What stood out for me in today's conversation with Dr. Berry is about how much of private practice is really about embracing autonomy. That is, autonomy of schedule, of decision making, and of defining what success looks like. He reminded us that while fellowship really prepares us for the clinical work, the rest, including contract negotiations, insurance intricacies, and building support networks, really requires initiative and continuous learning. Thank you all for listening, downloading, subscribing to our show, and for rating us with 5 stars or however many stars you think we deserve. You can find all of our show notes for this and all other episodes at acronair.org, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, shop around and keep your options open. And of course, stay healthy.